Okay, we're talking about Matthew 13 and the parables of the kingdom. How many are there? Who knows? Everyone says that there are 7, but when you count them, there are 8. We wouldn't want the Bible to get in the way of tradition now, would we? There is so much sloppiness in Bible interpretation. There are 8 of them, not 7. So the theory that the 7 parables of the kingdom line up with the 7 churches of Revelation doesn't quite make sense, especially when you really have to grasp at straws to see how some of them work and fit in there. I think some people just have good imaginations. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they do. Anyway, what's the parable of the sower? The first one. What happened? The first one, who remembers?
Yes,
First one.
Okay.
The birds of the air ate some of the seed. Represents the unsaved person. Goes in one ear and out the other. Second one fell on rocky ground. The plant sprung up quickly, but there was no deepness of earth, and it did not bear fruit. And there are some people who just have no depth in life. Now, this represents a persecuted person. The third one, because it actually talks about it, when Jesus, some fell on stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up because they had no deepness of earth. But anyway, when Jesus interprets it for them, that was in Matthew 13, verse 5, Jesus interprets it to them. He says in verse 20, he that received the seed into stony places, the same as he that heareth the word, and anon which or receiveth it, yet hath he no root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. The third one, thorns come up. And notice each process takes longer. Birds of the air eating seeds pretty quick. Something growing up quickly is not as quick, but still quick. In this case, they do grow up, but there happen to be thorns around. And the fourth one brings forth fruit. So it's essentially a parable on fruitfulness, first and foremost, even though we usually apply it to salvation, which is one application, but there were a bunch of others that we went over last week. Matthew 13, verse 24. This is the second one. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which soweth good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? And he said unto them, an enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Now let's skip to verse 36, when Jesus interprets this for them. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. Remember that. Anytime you see the word world in the Bible, think of the field. Or you see the field, think of the word world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, it's a picture of hell, so shall it be in the end of this world. And the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. As we sow the seed of the gospel, we not only have to deal with different soils, we have to deal with opposition. This is the next step. First of all, you've got, the different soils. Next thing you have to deal with is a progression here, is opposition. Satan's chief tactic is to counterfeit that which is good. You've ever been not guilty hopefully, been a victim of someone, I need change for this $20 bill, and you find out the 20 is counterfeit. Something about counterfeits. A common weed in the Palestine area was a weed called the bearded darnel. As it begins to grow, it looks very similar to wheat. It is only when the wheat begins to develop its head that the wheat becomes discernible. These weeds were prone to be infected with mold and therefore became poisonous. If the weeds were processed with the wheat, the food supply would be contaminated. Which brings to mind, perhaps, that lysergic acid that is found in ergot or ergot that used to get in bread, which is why one of the reasons they process breads. Lysergic acid diethylamide is LSD, the hallucinogen. But if it's just lysergic acid, that's what you find in ergot. And it was really a problem years ago. But anyway, the thing is, you don't tear them apart right away. It's going to be in a typical big church, you're going to have saved and unsaved people. In a Christian school, you're going to have saved and unsaved people. Parachurch ministries, you're going to have saved and unsaved people. And now if you've got a group of 10, that might not be the case. Can you think of any others? I mean, you can have bad ideas and good ideas in a typical church. This goes deeper than just the people. Any other ideas? Matthew 13:31, another parable. This is number 3. Put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed. Notice that they tend to get shorter now, these parables. Which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds. But when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Okay, the Greek passage reads the kingdom of Uranos and the birds of Uranos. So there's a pun in Greek. They both use Uranos. Actually, in one case, it's inflected. Okay, Greek in ancient Hebrew, but especially Greek, is highly inflected language. So it's not exactly Uranos. It's inflected for its case. Anyway, Ezekiel 31:6. All the fowls of heaven made their nests in his boughs, and under his branches did all the beasts of the field bring forth their young, and under his shadow dwelt all great nations. The image of the birds nesting in the branches of Assyria refers to the many kingdoms and peoples that benefited from the structure provided by the Assyrian kingdom, which is just what we read in Ezekiel 31. In a similar image, Jesus' main point of this short and somewhat humorous parable seems to be that though at present the kingdom of heaven appears to be small, remember he said it's the smallest among seeds, and not notice that it is nearly invisible, it will one day grow to become greater than what anyone can imagine. Think of Daniel's vision of the statue. Actually, that was Nebuchadnezzar's vision of the statue. Remember, Roak came down and destroyed the statue. Mm-hmm. It was gold, silver, brass.
Cut without hands.
Yeah. And, clay and the feet were something that really doesn't mix very well.
Iron and clay.
Yeah, iron and clay. Anyway, it's destroyed. But the kingdom, it just started out with Jesus. His disciples, which flunked the test on graduation day. Then at Pentecost, it grew more, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. Matthew 17:20, and Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, see the same mustard seed, Ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. So, yeah, the mustard seed can also be our faith. And our faith tends to grow as we grow with the Lord. Any other applications? Anything anyone can think of? Matthew 13:33. Another parable spake he unto them. This is number 4. The kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened. Well, is that the first time we see this in the Bible? 3 measures of meal? No, Genesis 18:6. These are the 3 visitors coming to talk to Abraham before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham hastened into a tent unto Sarah and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. So it's closely related to the previous parable. Actually, this parable is closely related to the parable of the mustard seed. Okay, there's a relation between the two. Because seed, start seeing it. Well, first of all, some interpret leaven as being evil. But Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven. So what's going on? I mean, you had to get rid of leaven before Passover. That represented evil. Well, the thing is either way. Okay, it can represent something good, it can represent something bad. Exponential growth. Remember the days of biology maybe, or physics, or math, exponential growth and exponential decay. Exponential decay is how they do, carbon-14 testing, where you can actually do it right in front of you with other stuff and see exponential decay. But it has to do with radioactivity. Exponential growth is different. You take a grain one day, you double it the next day. Now this has to do with an old story about chess. By the time you get to the 64th square of the chessboard, you'd have to have more wheat than the earth produces in 2,000 years. Now, if I were to say, I'm going to give you $1 million, or I'm going to give you a penny today, double it the next day, double that the next day, what would you have after 30 days? $10,737,418.24. Bacteria can multiply like crazy. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. And the reason sometimes they don't take over the earth is because, they need to eat and they need to get rid of waste products, so you get a big lump of them. And what's in the inside can't get nutrition and can't get rid of its waste products. So it stops at some point. Exponential growth is incredible, and that's what it's talking about. With leaven, you put a little in, and it's yeast. Think baker's yeast. And it grows and grows and grows. And of course, it gives off carbon dioxide as a waste product, which is why they use it in bread. It also gives off alcohol, but that bakes out with the bread. Now, in winemaking, it gives you alcohol, and it also gives you carbon dioxide, which you can degas later if you want, regular wine without it being carbonated like champagne. The thing is, it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. So think of the applications. What about evangelism? 1 person leads 2 to the Lord. Those 2 lead another 2 each, 4. It can work like that. What about something bad? Murmuring and rebellion. Look at the children of Israel in the wilderness. Usually it starts with just 1 or 2 people. I mean, it can cause a church split. People complain, and others complain, and others complain. Whole organizations can practically fade out of existence because of that type of thing. Anything else? See, we have to look at these as principles that apply. It's like gravity. It's all over the place. It's like light. It's all over the place. Like water, it's all over the place, even in the air we breathe. Zillion applications. And yes, I know zillion is not a word. Matthew 13:34. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them. that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. So much for perspicuity. The idea, Luther brought this out, the Bible should be kind of easy to understand. Not necessarily. Of course, he was reacting to the Roman Catholic teaching magisterium. But there's a lot in the Bible that's not easy to understand. He talks to them in parables, and they're not going to be able to understand them with their natural minds. Old Testament saints did not have this revelation. Remember what it says? Been kept secret from the foundation of the world. This is the first time people are hearing it. The Old Testament people didn't have this. Matthew 13, but we've talked about, seed. Okay, first parable is about seed. The second one is the wheat and the tares, so that has to do with seed. Third one is mustard seed, and the fourth one is leaven, which is, in a sense, a type of seed. In a sense. It's how yeast reproduces. Now we're going to get away from the seed. Matthew 13, 44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. Back in those days, you'd hide your money and belongings in the ground. I mean, these days we get FDIC, insured savings, and all that. Banks, the way we think of them, really didn't exist, at least not the way they do today. So people, because of poverty, people stealing, political turmoil, it made everyone vulnerable to having their possessions stolen or taken by those in power. Just think of how many times you read in the Old Testament, some pagan king comes and takes gold or vessels or whatever out of Jerusalem and out of the temple. So much more then than now, people would stash stuff underground. Like you hear about stashing money in your mattress. Well, in those days, they would bury things. Well, you couldn't go into someone else's property and take it. That would be theft. But if you bought their property and found it, it's yours. So if you accidentally discovered a treasure, it belonged to the person that owned the land. So local laws and customs seem to suggest that so long as that treasure remained buried, it was considered part of the field. If it was removed from the earth, it was the property of whomever owned the land. In other words, you couldn't just take it, that's theft. So you buy the land, and there it is. Okay? So we're really not detailing property law. That was in the background. But Christ's message is that the kingdom of heaven is worth trading for everything a person owns in order to come into possession of it. You have to give up a lot to become a Christian. In some countries, you put your life in the line. You could be tortured, you could be in prison, you could be killed. And here in the United States, well, someone calls you a Jesus freak, maybe you could put your job on the line. In some religions, like if you're Mormon and become a born-again Christian, it might put your family status in jeopardy. Like if you're a Mormon woman and become a Christian, they might force a divorce on you. But we don't know what it's like as openly as some other societies would. Now, for us, it does cost us something. We all have, probably a lot of us have our stories of something we gave up for the sake of the gospel in one way or another. Pastors that could make a lot of money, like ours, made a lot of money. Then he went into the pastorate. He's not making so much. But also you can see Christ himself giving up what was in heaven, giving up his heavenly glory temporarily to come down for us. So you could see, it's not just stuff that we do, but at least in this case, it's something Christ did. Matthew 13, 45 to 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. Pearls, they come from shellfish. Guess what? Leviticus 11 says it's going to have fins and scales for you to eat it. Shellfish are not kosher. They're against Levitical law. Religious Jews will not eat lobster. And some of the less religious Jews will eat it, and then if they have leftovers, because it's very expensive, you put it in your garage and don't take it home into your house. Who, when he hath found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. again, you could see Jesus as seeing the church as a pearl of great price. We also will find something in you sell all that you have and buy it. The gospel can cost you everything. It's unexpected good fortune. A merchant in search of fine pearls. Back in those days, divers would hunt pearls in the ocean waters that surrounded the Middle East. The best pearls could be sold for enormous sums of money. Again, it could be what Jesus did. It could be something we do. Revelation 21:21, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls. That's what we talk about, the pearly gates. Every several gate was of one pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. We're starting to get away from Jewish customs now as these parables continue. We're getting away from something that the Jews could all understand and appreciate. Now you're starting to hit something where some of the more religious would say, wait a minute. Now, I don't know, camels were unclean animals, but people rode them. They just weren't supposed to eat them. There were probably different levels of uncleanliness, and maybe this would not have offended Jews. Even a lot of Jews these days, the women might wear pearls, where they still might keep a kosher house. But actually, the pearl, technically, it's from an unclean animal. So now we're getting into the Gentiles. It represents the Gentiles in some ways. Remember that to the Jew first, then the Gentile. Matthew 13:47. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, net fishing, which when it was full they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the end of the world. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. Remind you of something we read earlier, the wheat and the tares. Wait till the end of the world. It's not our job. The angels will do it. And cast them into a furnace of fire. Now it's talking about how there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Okay, so unlike the parable of the wheat and the tares, it appears to focus on the Israelites because it talks about children of the kingdom. Used in the parable of the wheat and the tares, this parable more distinctly applies to everyone on earth. Like the previous one, the pearl of great price, Gentiles are included here. You see the progression? It's kind of the Jewish thing, then it's going on into the Gentile world. Matthew 13:51. Jesus said unto them, have you understood all these things? They said unto him, yeah, Lord, and I don't believe them. Yes?
Okay, on the end of the world, I've heard some people teach that the world is, the planet Earth is not going to end, so to speak. The age will. And there will be a new heaven and a new earth. So.
Yeah, new heaven and new earth and no oceans. That's not true. No, I mean, what I just said was true. The earth is going to end. You get a new heavens and a new earth. Okay, there's the answer.
Okay. Yes, there's some people that say world without end.
See what it is in Greek, if it's like ages without end or something?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it very distinctly says, it talks about the New Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth. Matthew 13:51-52. Okay, have you understood all these things? They said, yeah, Lord, which they obviously did not. Then said he unto them, therefore every scribe, now this is the 8th parable. Not bad for 7 parables of the kingdom. Again, watch the church tradition. It gets in the way of our interpretation. Sometimes we can't even count right because of church tradition. Therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old. Now, that is every scribe. Still a parable of the kingdom, because he's instructed under the kingdom of heaven. This parable is unparalleled in the other gospel accounts. So what's the scribe's treasure? I mean, what did they do? They would copy scripture, because you didn't have the printing press back then. But it is knowledge and understanding of the scriptures. So out of his wealth of spiritual knowledge, this kingdom-seeking scribe will bring forth treasures that are both new things and old. In other words, his understanding will beautifully affirm timeless truth that he and others have long understood. And he's going to find new insight. He's going to get new insight into the scripture. Insight that's already been there. It's always been there in a sense, but can only be seen in light of the kingdom. The truths were always there, but they're largely invisible or unappreciated by those who do not understand the kingdom. Again, you hand a book with an apologetic to an unsaved person. The book has blessed you tremendously. They read it, they hand it back. So what? They don't even believe it. You have to understand the kingdom to really appreciate these. So, scribes often referred to those who were regarded as expert interpreters and teachers of the Old Testament law and Jewish doctrine. So Jesus is saying here that just as the Jewish people had their scribes, even so the kingdom of heaven will have its scribes. Jesus is talking to these disciples, and they're going to fill this role in a special way in the early church, and then of course there will be others after they die. As a matter of fact, Jesus later prophesied about them, using the same term in Matthew 23:34. Wherefore, behold, I send you unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city. The scribes are to teach, including what these parables are about. So you see this progression. You start out with something which could be considered distinctly Jewish. It gets into more and more of a Gentile area. And then he talks about the scribes. They're going to spread this all over. So that's at least some treatment of the 8, not 7 when you count them, but the 8 parables of the kingdom. Any questions? Comments? Okay, Father, do give us all a good week. Give us safety, give us healing due to allergies and everything else that's going around, such as what's going on in the schools right now. In Jesus' name, amen.